Originally I was going to be doing a segment on just geeking out about Final Fantasy VII. However, I was having trouble figuring out the best way to pipe in another person, and I really wanted a very special guest to be present for that showing. So, until I get all that worked out, and of course any of our scheduling conflicts worked out, I'm just going to be doing something else. Don't worry, that episode is going to come. Also, just so you know, the person in particular is my brother, and he is doing a Marvel MCU marathon right now, and honestly, I wouldn't want that interrupted, so I am not about to try to pry him away from that. So instead of talking about Final Fantasy VII, we're going to be talking about the greatest Final Fantasy game ever made. That's right, Final Fantasy Tactics. Now, a lot of people probably are like, what? What do you mean, Final Fantasy Tactics? No, that was a perfect game. It was a freaking masterpiece. It didn't need a bunch of 3D models. The only 3D models were the battlegrounds. I mean, it was absolutely perfect. From stories to characters, just the mechanics, everything. I loved it. I'm gonna get into this drawing while I just geek out about that. And if you guys want to comment anything that you want, any of your lovely memories of it, I'm gonna tell you. Go ahead. It's gonna be great. Gonna be great. All right, let's get into this drawing. Now, let's see here. So, for me, I actually got into RPGs late in the Sega Genesis and Sega CD era. My brother and I used to hang out with these people who had a Sega CD and way more Sega Genesis games than we did, and they introduced us to these lovely RPGs called Lunar and Fantasy Star. Now, Lunar I didn't really play much of. I think I watched my friend play more Lunar than I actually played. If I played any at all, I honestly don't remember. I think I was just mesmerized by the animated cutscenes and all the voices, and I'm just like, wow, this is a video game. That's really what kind of like let me know that video games could be a lot more than what we've been getting. Um, so, but Fantasy Star was like kind of like my first big. It was Fantasy Star 4, and that was kind of my first big um, venture into RPGs. So when Final Fantasy VII came around, I was already kind of a fan of the genre, and I hadn't played any Final Fantasy games before. So 7 was my first entry into the series, though I had heard of it because we had often got the game magazines and what have you. So it's not like I was unfamiliar with the title, even if I was unfamiliar with the game itself. And of course, we got Final Fantasy VII when it came out. It was a huge deal. I mean, you weren't the cool kid at school if you didn't have your copy of Final Fantasy VII. Trust me on that one. If you were too young to remember that point in time. But around that same time, there came another Final Fantasy. And I remember it being advertised in all the little game books. And it was Final Fantasy Tactics. And I remember reading so many strange things about this game. And I had to try it. We ended up, I think we just ended up buying it. I don't even think we rented it. I honestly think we just ended up buying this game outright. Um, And I remember my brother Samuel, I think he enjoyed it, but he wasn't exactly proficient at it. But if we're being honest, I didn't start out proficient at it, although it really kind of just spoke to me in a way that Final Fantasy VII, while great, do not get me wrong, it just did not capture me the way Tactics did. Tactics had a very in-depth story. I love the whole swords and wizards and stuff. And while Final Fantasy VII, gives you that, it's set in a more modern day world, or even in some parts futuristic, a little steampunk here and there. Whereas you have Final Fantasy Tactics, and the most advanced they get is this town with some mechanical ingenuity, and they have like some very rudimentary guns, but for the most part, it's very much medieval swords and dragons and and magic. And if you've never played Final Fantasy Tactics, first of all, you are missing out. Second of all, I'm not sure exactly where you would really play it on a console unless you get your hands on an old PlayStation. Maybe you actually have an old PlayStation. If you have an old PlayStation, by all means, find yourself a copy of this game. It's well worth it. If not, there is a very decent port of it um, available. I know on the Android market. I don't know if the iOS supports it. I would imagine that they do. I couldn't imagine iOS not carrying that game. It's a classic, really. Um, when you really once you get into it, you'll see why I call it that. Um, Probably one of my favorite games of all time, not just Final Fantasy, but like my favorite game. Seriously speaking, if you were to lock me in a room and you were going to say, "Hey, look, man, this is where you're going to spend the rest of your life," and you can either spend the rest of your life in here bored, or with one game that you get to play for the rest of your life, what would you pick? I would very likely pick Final Fantasy Tactics before he even finished his breath. Because I know that I could play that from sunup to sundown and honestly never get bored with it. So, having said that, um, I'm a little upset because it hasn't been ported to the PlayStation 4, and I don't really see any reason why I should believe it's going to be ported to the PS5 either. Um, But it has had several ports, and I have purchased a few of them. The original was on the PlayStation. Uh, the, um, the PlayStation Game Boy. What is it called? Oh, the PSP. Yeah, PlayStation Game Boy. Jesus. Oh man, don't tell Sony I said that, or don't tell Nintendo. I'm not sure. Not sure which one would be more offended. So so with that in mind, I've actually purchased three copies of this game, one for my PlayStation. Mostly because I didn't actually buy the original purchase when I was a kid. Obviously, I was a kid. I was like in, God, when that came out in 98, I was probably still in junior high, maybe high school. I'd have to really think about it. Um, but that original copy ended up getting stolen in an unfortunate home invasion incident that happened many years later. So I actually obtained my own copy of it later as an adult just to play on my PlayStation. And then I bought the PSP version. And yes, I even got the mobile version, which again, as I've said, is actually a fairly decent port for a mobile game. Um, there's even such a community for this game to the point where there is a treasure trove of tools known as the Lion Editor, and it allows you to edit the game on both PlayStation and PSP copies. And if you're like me and you know how to make your PlayStation play, an official disc, or if you have a mod chip, you can burn custom ISOs, assuming you have the ISO to begin with, which I have an actual copy, so I don't really feel like I'm, doing anything wrong there. Uh, but I have an ISO I call my Lucky Start, where I start the game, and I really don't have to boot it once, get to a save point, and then the official disk will load everything from the customized save because all I did was give myself a excellent party that may or may not include some characters you normally can't actually get on your party, like Velius, I think is how you pronounce his name. The big big ram boss inside Riovan's castle. So, real quick recap there for people who let's turn that off. For people who don't really know what this game's about. So if you ever played Final Fantasy, but you never played Final Fantasy Tactics, which is what I was getting into, it's a little different than Final Fantasies. There's no active turn-based system, as in some of the newer ones. There's definitely not a I mean, it's kind of active turn-based, but it's not like three characters standing in a row with enemies and then y'all just take turns selecting your moves and fighting. That's not how this game goes. So I actually rather enjoyed it. I'm told by fans of the genre that other games like Tactics Ogre really does this well. So I've never actually played that, but I kind of want to go find myself a copy of it and get in on that because it's like I don't know. I guess not. I guess it's really more like D&D, but being that I have never actually played D&D. I liken it more to chess on steroids. You got your board, and that's your battleground, and you select your pieces that you want to be put on that board, um, and where you want to put them, relatively speaking, to your starting point, and then you move them. They each have their turns. They have a active timer, which tells the computer when exactly to make it their turn. You can look at that and use that in your strategy. When that character is actually going to create their action that you told them, who's going to come before them. All of that is open to you. So if you're not paying attention to those menus, then you could easily fail. Um, because you could be setting yourself up for failure, having a wizard charging an attack, and they're dead before they ever get to actually use that attack. So you really got to pay attention. That's basically what I'm getting at. You got to pay attention. You can't just go in Leroy Jenkins. You've got to have a plan. And I'm going to tell you right now. I don't remember if it was Prima or Brady Games that had the official strategy guide. I don't remember. What I do remember was the strategy guide, at least in my experience, was good for one thing, and that was the art. Everything else in that strategy guide, oh, the art and the job class map, so that you could, um, you know, build your team up into the job classes you want. Everything else, as far as like strategies for winning battles, absolute bollocks. Absolute. I got killed so many times trying to follow the strategies of that book. I ended up casting it away and devising my own strategies, and that worked out a lot better. And I do mean a lot better. I mean, I did beat the game, and I did go back and got the extra stuff like the you can unlock Cloud is one of the secret characters. He's honestly though, it's kind of disappointing because by the time you can unlock Cloud, you're pretty far in the game, and he's not as powerful as the rest of your team. It's just kind of a neat nod. Um, some of the other characters, if you unlock Beowulf, I know, right? Beowulf. You unlock him, he's a lot more helpful, especially in combat, than Cloud is. So, I don't like, I did it just to complete it, but I barely use him. Barely use him. And I honestly think I only unlocked him my first time around. I don't think I've ever bothered to unlock them again because I did it once and it wasn't that great. There is this robot that's lovely to unlock, worker number 8 or worker number 9. I can't remember. Um, but he's like a freaking powerhouse. So it's like, why bother wasting time unlocking, you know, the fan favorite from Final Fantasy VII when the original characters for this game are actually far more useful in combat. At least that's my opinion. Maybe yours may differ. Maybe you were able to use Cloud. Maybe I just didn't know how to use Cloud. I mean, there's job classes on that game I just completely avoid. The dancers, they got some useful moves, but honestly speaking, that's just not my fighting style. The bard, again, not my fighting style. I will go through with a mediator and make your entire team become part of my party before I use a bard. Um, so the idea, though, the story, which is my favorite part about it, because that's what really enthralled me. It was, a political, almost espionage thriller. Definitely political undertones, as you have two kings, so to speak, clamoring for the same throne, and they have this big war, and they're both use the symbols of the lion and the black lion and the white lion. So it's the War of the Lions. Um, Sounds like a V.C. Andrews book. And what happens is, of course, the church, because it's the church, starts using or maybe they were always doing it. I'm not really sure, but they were definitely manipulating the war to their advantage. And they started seeking out these things that I kind of likened to the materia, except they weren't actually a materia. They were more like their version of Infinity Stones. If you possess them, you could become part of this weird Super Sentai fighting force called the Zodiac. And as it turned out, though, the people who used the stones and invoked their power, they turned into these beasts. And that's where you started having people with their own agendas, backstabbing the church. Everyone was in it for themselves. This was a genuine, like, Shakespearean tragedy, and I loved every minute of it. You didn't know who to trust. I literally trusted my own. I honestly wasn't even sure if I should. I trusted my own main character, and I trusted this. How do you say her name? Agris. I'm not honestly sure. I've only ever heard her name spoken once, and that was on the PSP version, and it's been a while, and I forgot how they pronounced it. But she's a holy knight that was supposed to protect the princess. Um, and you kind of get stuck with her in your party, and she's actually very powerful. Um, she's useful in the grand scheme of things with that game. So it's not really someone you want to scoff at. Definitely someone you want to level up. I don't know what other people's dream teams are. I know a lot of people like Thunder God Sid. Not really a fan of putting him in my party. I used him in my first playthrough, and that was actually about it. But as far as anything else goes, it was I don't know. I didn't particularly care for his move set. I guess I did like his weapon. I believe he comes with God Save the Queen, and I used the mess out of God Save the Queen. To the point where I actually made use of one of my favorite glitches in the original game, which was the item duplication glitch. So I would take the most powerful weapons, like God Save the Queen, and I would give them to my entire party, at least the ones who used swords. And then Ramza, the main character, who starts out as a very sniveling young boy and just kind of seems he comes from privilege. I always built him up to be a knight with the ninja two sword ability. And you better believe once I was able to duplicate God Save the Queen, that two sworded ninja knight had two of those blades. You best believe it. And it was quite a battle. So like my favorite team to build up was first of all that. Second of all, I loved to have a chocobo on my team, specifically a black chocobo. And that's because the black chocobo could fly, and it could fly you over all kinds of terrain. It had a very wide range of movement, so in one turn, you could cover a lot of distance no matter what direction you were going. And the best part about all that um, was that you could ride on that. So I would mount Ramza onto that black chocobo. I would literally always um, I would always sacrifice a a slot for actual characters so that Ramza could have that black chocobo to ride, and it was always my absolute because I would just two swords just run all over the map, just hacking and slashing, and it was I was just an unstoppable force there. Like I almost didn't even need the others, but they did come in handy, and they did come in handy. Of course, the other team members always have an archer. Um, you could always you could have the magic users. The magic users, unless you spent a lot of time leveling them up, I found that they were actually more trouble than they were worth. Except for maybe a summoner. Now I would spend the time to level up a summoner because their attacks were very powerful once you got them going, and if once you learn to time them right. As far as a black mage and even a white mage or the time mage even, while yes they had very powerful moves, they were more of a liability than anything. The computer knew how to use them to their greatest ability. And if the computer had a thief on their team, the first thing they're doing is charming those particular. The first thing they are doing is charming those particular people. So you're not going to really have them for very long. You're going to be spending pretty much all of your time uncharming these characters. Unless, of course, you finally come across accessories that prevent that. And if you do come across those accessories, by all means, make sure everyone in your party gets that stuff. I would just never waste time making myself immune to certain elemental attacks. It was always status effects. Immune to poison, immune to charm. My favorite one is immune to death. So, because you would run into characters who could do like an instant death, they wouldn't have to tear down your HP. And I hated those. I absolutely hated those kind of enemies. Like that's just not fair at all. But you could find little items that would make you immune to that. And certain job classes, I think, if I'm not mistaken, were a little better at fighting those things. If I'm not mistaken, and I could be, it could just be weapons and items that were associated with those job classes. Um, but so it spans five. So getting back into the actual game, it was broken up a lot better, I think, than other games. Because like Final Fantasy VII, I had no clue how far into the story I was. Not one bit. I was enjoying the ride, but it's like when's it gonna end? As an adult now, and remembering the story, it's kind of like wow, it was a little short. But as a kid, I really had no clue. From the outset, I already knew that Final Fantasy Tactics was a five-chapter game, and so it would tell you when you got through the chapters that you're on a new one. And honestly, chapter five was pretty short, but I didn't know that. So you kind of had a sense of progress. Oh, I'm on chapter five. I'm on chapter four. I'm on chapter three. Certain side quests were only available in certain chapters, and so you kind of looked forward to that. Well, now I'm on chapter two, so now I get to go after this side quest, and you can get these weird side quests from the barman, because of course the barman knows everything. That's just a staple just kind of a staple of, well, RPGs, really. Um, so having said that, where was I going with this? Oh yeah. So yeah, having talked about the chapters, I gotta say my favorite chapter though, my absolute favorite is quite possibly chapter 3. All right, because that's when you know who's in it for who, or at least you think you do. You are still chasing after the prince. You still got to save the princess. Um, your relationship with the Lita is kind of like you're not even really sure what's going on with it. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? It keeps showing you these bits where he's talking to the queen. Does he really have her best interest at heart? What's going on here? And how can I get some better clarity? Meanwhile, you have now fought one of the Zodiac monsters, and you see the power that you're up against. Quaklin, I think was Quacklin. I don't remember. I don't know how to say his name. Again, it was all in text, and I've never actually seen these, heard these names actually spoken. But I will say that I will say that it was a heck of a boss battle. Um, because like the first thing he does is he just opens up his just nasty, stomach mouth and just shoots all kinds of spells at you, all kinds of stuff that is status effects, and you're just like, man. So if you don't go into that battle prepared with accessories and armor to protect you from various status effects, you are in for a world of hurt. And not to mention, you almost kind of feel like you're on a time limit to win because like my first time through, I think like half my party got petrified. Um, Someone else ended up with a death sentence. It was pretty intense. I was like, what? Um, but that's not even where I really got stuck the first time. Because like that's one of the great things about this game is you could find yourself absolutely stuck on a particular level or fight rather, and you almost want to just rage quit. I did a few times. I'm not gonna lie. I rage quit a lot in that game, and what happens is you just, I mean, for me, I think I was just not being clever enough. But what can happen and what has happened to me before is you progress a little too far too fast, and then you're stuck in a battle that you can't back away from. You can't go level back up, and you are not nearly leveled up enough to actually win. So it is for that reason why it is exceedingly important that you make multiple saves, and I do mean multiple saves. Because if you don't, you are going to find yourself wishing you did. Um, you will find yourself absolutely wishing you made multiple saves because you'd have to, you would have to start over, and by the time you get to one of the, ah, don't pay attention to that. Doctor will see that. Once you get to one of those fights where you can't back out of, it's kind of late enough in the game. You really don't want to. You really do not want to have to start over. If you do, I mean, it's going to be a long haul back to where you were. Although, in defense of that, oops, in defense of that, you you could play it better, get better stats, keep different items, maybe try different characters, different job classes, see what actually best suits you. Because I did have to start over. My first actual like stuck level was I think the slums of Dorter, and even leveling up my current group, and that was very very early in the game. It's like fourth or fifth battle. My current group, even leveling them up, it just wasn't all that great. And I recognized that I had a terrible group. I think this was about the time when I put down the strategy guide, actually, and was like, we're going to do it my way. And I started back over with the intent of completely doing it my way. And once I got back to that fifth battle, I just, ransacked it. Um, so if you like strategy, you'd love this game. If you don't really like strategy games, first of all, pretty much every video game is strategy, so don't even get me started on that. I don't care what you're playing. I don't care what you're playing. You could be playing, so say any game isn't strategy, it's kind of messed up because how are you figuring out how you're going to win? You could be playing Animal Crossing. You have a strategy to get the best stuff, right? I mean, you have a strategy. There's missions, I believe. I've never actually played it, so I'm just kind of going off of what I've seen my wife do because she loves that game. Um, but if there is anything to be earned or a goal to be met, there is a strategy to it. So I don't really care what you're playing. You're playing a strategy game. So you can say I'm not into the strategy games all you want, but if you're into video games, I kind of feel like you are. And I think, honestly, everybody, especially RPG fans, should try Final Fantasy Tactics at least once. I think you will find yourself rather pleased with it. I think that you'll want to pick it back up. I don't really, I've rarely met someone who didn't like Final Fantasy Tactics, and those that didn't like it just strictly were just not into that particular kind of strategy. I mean, that was not their genre, completely. And I know my brother Sam played it. Again, I don't remember him being particularly good at it, but I just don't think it grabbed him like it did me. And so he just wasn't really, just didn't really put in, the effort to become good at it like I did. Um, and that's one thing I like to tell people all the time as far as things like, talent goes. A lot of people think, you're talented, God just gave you a gift. And it's like, okay, I have an interest in a specific hobby, so of course I'm going to devote my time to getting better at said hobby. That doesn't mean I have some innate gift, passed down to me by, the ancient ones or some crap. Ooh, no, no, no. Because just like football players, um, they're interested in football. And so they practice and they practice and they practice until they're as good at football as they absolutely want to or need to be. Um, I am not a fan of football. So I do not put practice in. So guess what? I'm no good at it. But I don't care that I'm no good at it because I don't have interest in it. I mean, and you could say that, well, but you like video games, yada, yada. Okay, whatever. All right. My point is, if you're not interested in a particular genre of games, you're not going to put any effort into that. And while, yes, my brother and I both absolutely love, um, absolutely love RPGs, I don't think he really cared for that particular RPG. Maybe the story didn't hold him. I don't really know. Because there were other RPGs he played that I particularly didn't really get into. Breath of Fire was one that rings a bell. He was absolutely great at that game. I watched him play the hell out of that and watched him beat it. Me, I don't think I made it past I don't even think I made it past the first act. I don't even really think I made it into the first act. I think I was pretty much I think I lost interest somewhere in the prologue, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Um, So, yeah. All right. I think I've rambled enough here. So I'm gonna be wrapping this up here pretty soon. But I do want to get done with this drawing. I'm sure you guys have listened to my voice ramble on a little too long as it is. So, god dang it. All right, there we are. Anyway, so like I was saying though before, it would have been really nice to have gotten a release on the PS4. I'm a little mad at a couple of games not getting releases on PS4 though. It's not just this one. I mean, there's Mega Man Legends, no PS4 release. Really, any of those Mega Man games is no PS4 release, and I'm just kind of like, why? Why is there no PS4 release for these games? No Tron Bonne, nothing. Now, I have heard tales of some things as to why maybe Tron Bonne wasn't, or not Tron Bonne, the original Mega Man. So, the original Mega Man Legends, I'm sorry. And one of the things that I remember someone talking about was it's apparently it's related to the cola machines, because apparently the cola machines in Mega Man Legends is an actual product. And it's a licensing issue, plain and simple. So I'm kind of like, a little miffed at that, especially when there is a completely other reason why it could be and it's not. I'm not going to get into that here on this particular channel because it kind of goes into some it goes into some content that I believe warrants a trigger warning. So we're not going to discuss that here. Okay. All right, there you go. There you go. And I forgot to load up a flesh tone for him. Uno momento. Ooh. Skin colors. Real. Let's see how this looks once I reapply the shade. Bam! Love it. Okay, I'm going to do the background later. I'm going to go ahead and finish this out for you guys, just because the joke is in my head. And I want you to see it. Okay. Do not want flesh colored text. That would be very difficult to read. And all right. Oh, no, too small. Too small. Nobody can read that. Ah, too big. Too big. Everyone can read that. Just right. Just right. Okay. And what did I do? I have no clue what I did. I don't know. I'm going to undo it though. I know that much. I know what I did. Honestly, Matt. Honestly. Layers. I swear. And there you have it. Okay, so that is it's actually a lot better than I thought it was going to turn out to be. So, in case you're unfamiliar with the subject matter that you've been listening to me ramble about, kid with the blonde hair, that's Ramza. Yes, that's actually an enemy you fight in the game, and for whatever reason, they shoot lightning out of their undead hands. So, whatever that's about. But again, I've gone way longer this time than last time, so I would like for you guys to let me see if I can't show y'all a little bit more of this. There we go. Look at that. Look at that. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get off here. See you guys next time.